And the weight of your body, the whole of your body, posterior part of your body, the parts that are in contact with the floor, they're yielding to the floor. And there's a reciprocal energy that comes back that can be described as being support. Well, because it is support, because if it wasn't supporting you, you'd be going through the earth or through the hard floor. So it maybe enjoy that support and feel that and embody that support as much as you can. And when we'll be working today, there's really no rights or wrongs. So I'd like to start off like that, that it's just an exploration, a curiosity for us. So come into just feeling your heels, your left heel, your right heel, parts of your lower leg that are in contact with the floor, parts of your thighs, maybe your buttocks, maybe a bit of your lower back, maybe your mid-back and upper back, shoulders, probably your scapula, parts of your arms. Some parts of your arms will be in contact with the floor, other parts won't. Hands, back of your head. And just see what it's like for a moment if you just very gently open your jaw and just rest your tongue gently at the base of your palate. And for your own curiosity, has that just changed your experience in some way? Has it softened? Does it enable you to maybe go a tiny bit more internal? And come to feeling the movement of your breath, wherever your breath is moving, whether you feel it somewhere abdominally, whether you feel it more thoracically, maybe the air touching your nostrils as you're breathing in and out. Maybe it's a part of the fabric of your clothing that you're feeling. And just see for a moment what your breath is doing. And then take your awareness to the movement of your belly. Your diaphragm descends, and your belly bulges on the inhale, and on the exhale, just have a letting go. So allow the muscles and whatever's involved in your inhale, just allow that to just recoil and soften and let go. And work at having your breath real even, an even beginning part of your breath, middle part, end. An even pause, and the exhale as even as you can, both beginning, middle and end. And as you're exploring your breath, you might also find that there's a part of your breath that you feel maybe habitually that you want to rush. And if you have that, just see if you can keep it as even as you can. Inhale, there's a pause, and there's an exhale. Smooth as you can. And also keeping your mind as quiet as you possibly can too. Real quiet mind, just as much as you can. And when your thoughts come, because they do, it really doesn't matter. Don't give yourself a hard time. But try just not to give your thoughts too much energy. Keeping yourself just as quiet as you can. Also, while you're focusing on the movement of your belly, be curious about the three-dimensionality of your breath. So it's not just going belly towards ceiling. There is a movement also of belly towards floor in your lower back. Spine moves very gently towards the floor. I've just put everybody on mute so we don't get that bits of noise in the background. So feel that movement of your belly towards the ceiling, towards the floor, sideways. And because we're resting, our breath can be quite shallow because the demand for oxygen is really not very great. And now switching your attention to the posterior part of your rib cage, the part that's in contact with the floor. And initiate your breath from the posterior part of your rib cage. And if you're a frequent belly breather and you don't focus much on your thoracic cage, it might be a little bit challenging for you, and that's okay too, because it often is when we try and change our breath patterns. So initiating your breath and the movement primarily from posterior part of your rib cage. There's an inhale, pause, and an exhale. And if your breath is nice and smooth, you can either extend it a bit longer, both the inhale and the exhale. Still keeping yourself as quiet as you can. Jaw gently open, tongue gently resting on your palate. And maybe also breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. See what that's like for you too. And shifting your awareness now to the lateral side of your rib cage. Part of your rib cage that's between the side of your body and your arms. And initiate the movement of breath going lateral in your rib cage. Smooth as you possibly can with the inhale, smooth exhale. And now switch your attention to the front part of your rib cage. And maybe first of all note how familiar that is for you. If it is, I think we tend to be much more front on in our experiences in the world. We're going to look at that a bit more this evening as well. There's an inhale, pause, exhale. As easeful as you can, as quiet as you can. And now switch your attention to the whole of your thoracic cage as one functioning unit. The front, back, the sides, up, the down. And allow for a smooth generosity of breath to stimulate, be initiated from the whole of your thoracic cage as one functioning unit. smooth as you possibly can. Smooth inhale, smooth pause, smooth exhale. Still keeping your mind just as quiet as you can. And don't worry when your thoughts come, just try not to give them too much energy. And now take your awareness to an area just below your xiphoid process, just below your ribcage. And imagine that you have this ball or sphere that's deep inside your body, and this small ball, as you breathe in, expands. It expands going downwards, it expands going upwards, it expands going sideways, forwards and back. And it moves and stimulates both the area of your abdominal cavity and your thoracic cavity, but without trying to make it go in any one particular area. So just see where that breath goes and how that breath works for you. That ball in the middle, just below your xiphoid process. Allowing for some freedom of movement, both in your abdominal area and also your thoracic area. So no holding on or focusing too much on one area. Smooth. Inhale. Smooth pause. Smooth exhale. And then just come back for a while just to your breath, the movement of your breath, wherever it might be. Just with a quiet mind, just seeing what your breath does. And then just nice, gently and easily, let's come to lying on the sides and come to standing up. If you can put your cameras on so that I can see you, just helps me a little bit, partly to be connected, but also if I can see your movements you're doing, then I can maybe support you. If there's some adjustment that can be made. So if you worked with me before, you know that I've got some favourite Qigong exercises to share with you. And if you're new to this, then I'll show you what to do. But first of all, and this will also have a slight difference importance about it as well, this notion of just being in a standing position. And so the suggestion is that our feet are pretty much parallel and about a fist width apart. So they're not spread wide. So they're basically under your hips, with your hips are here. So the weight of your body is coming all the way down your hips, down your legs. And just have your arms just very gently by your sides, a little bit of space between the sides of the body and your arms. Your fingers just very gently pointing towards the floor. And allow yourself just to go very gently forward and back. Not too much, but just enough so that you feel there's the sensation in your fascia and your muscles just stopping you go forwards. And going back and forth in this movement, we're going to explore this in a few other ways as well. But what you'll find is those tensions that you feel are often your first default patterns. So allow yourself to be soft in that engagement, gently forward, gently back. And then come to a place now for you in this moment feels neither forward nor back. Come to a sensation of your heels on the floor, the sides of your feet on the floor, toes. Try and have an even distribution of weight. So you might need to soften your knees. And if you just soften your knees, don't bend them, but just take the tension out of them. And also the tension out of your ankles. And so if your feet are as soft as they can be, your ankles are soft, knees are soft, then you can allow the tibia and fibula to support you in their uprightness. So a lot of this exploration of standing is to take away any of the unnecessary muscular effort that's needed to keep you standing, so we use our skeleton really well. And from your hips, you have your whole pelvic girdle, sacrum, weight of your spine, weight of your rib cage, all your organs. Have your arms just dangling, so they just hang on the rib cage, your scapula just hangs on the rib cage. And the last two things is just have a little kind of look where your head and your neck is, and see if you can position that also so that it just feels, it kind of sits into alignment, maybe a little bit more if you can do an adjustment. And then from here, just a little bit of lateral movement, left and right. And so when you lean to one side, you may feel the tension coming up your leg to your hip, and also the other side. Again, the movement doesn't have to be that much, just enough to give you some indication. A lot of the work that I do is really big, is pre-big muscular movement. So it's before the muscles really start to kick in. Tends to be more sort of ligamentous and fascia related, and obviously joint related. And then come back to a place now that feels for you neither forward nor back, nor left nor right. Come to your skull. And your skull, there's a little bit of movement that you can have, a little glide movement as it sits on the atlas, the first vertebra in the neck. And so think about just subtle movement maybe that you can do with your head sitting on your neck. And also your neck, the position of that. And the weight of your head, your skull, is going down the front of your spine, the bulky part of the spine, not the back part of the spine. So allow that weight to be distributed as much as possible, front of your spine. Shoulders relax, arms relax. Back, spine, lower back. Sacrum. Pelvic girdle. Soften your hip joints. And enjoy the big femur bones, the length of the big femur bones keeping you upright. Soften your knees. Not too soft, so that if you're too soft, then you have to hold yourself up. Feel the tibia and fibula, the shafts in your lower leg, also keeping you upright. Soft in your ankles, soft in your feet. And just hang out here for a few moments. And you'll probably find that your old patterns muscles just keep biting in. If you're a shoulder person, then your shoulders might keep tightening up. If you're like me, I tend to be a sort of a buttock holder. So all the time those old patterns keep coming back, and just readjust my frame so that I can keep letting go of those default patterns. And from here, I'm going to share with you just 3 Qigong exercises that I do on a regular basis every day. And for me, these are just so important for my practice. It sets the tone. But the movements that we do, I think at the end of these 2 hours, you'll have a real appreciation of how they work kind of subliminally in the background with all the things that we're going to work with today. So the first one that I'm going to do is called Lift in the Sky. If you're familiar with it, please go ahead and start practicing. And if you're not, watch me just a couple of times. It's actually quite easy. So first thing that I'm going to do in this dance is I'm going to look down towards my extended arms, and my fingers are going to be pointing towards each other and my palms towards the floor. On an inhale, I'm going to lift my arms up, looking through my fingers. And when my arms are upright, my palms are facing the ceiling, I pause with my breath, still push up, and then I exhale coming down. Okay, both arms going up. I'm just going to put you guys on mute again, because see if that can happen. Then I'll go through that again too. Mute all. Okay. That's so you don't get that noise in the background. I'll show you that again, because it's quite straightforward really. So I'm bending my head forward, just my head. My arms are extended, my palms are facing the floor, my fingers towards each other, my fingers slightly open. And then on an inhale, and I'm inhaling through my nose, I pause with my breath when they're upright and push up, and I exhale through my mouth. Okay? Inhaling, coming up, looking through my fingers. Pause with my breath. Lift the sky. And we'll just do that a couple more times so that you get a sense of the form, because it's not going to change. The few things that you just to be mindful of is the inhale through your nose, a pause, lift up during the pause, exhale through your mouth. And now just imagine that your arms are floating up in water. So we've got this Benjamin swimming in the ocean kind of feeling to it. So just if your arms are just seaweed just floating up. So take the effort out of the movement. The movement looks still the same, but look how so much more easeful it is. Still keep the form quite well, but when you get involved with the energy, that form can go a bit more. Inhaling through your nose, exhaling through your mouth. And then we'll do that just a couple more times. And then when your arms are next by your sides, just come back to standing and see what that feels like. Do a little scan through your body. You might want to start off with your feet, have a good purchase of contact on the floor. You might just want to soften your knees, soften your buttocks and lower back, the shoulders. Quiet in your mind, just easeful in your stance. It's not a military stance. There'll always be a little bit of movement because there has to be. The next one that I'm going to do, and I'll show you a couple of times, is called Carrying the Moon. I'm bending forward a little bit more. My palms are cupped and facing my legs, they're just above my knees. Then on an inhale, I'm bringing my arms up. When my hands are behind me, cupped, I pause with my breath, and then I bring my arm down, coming down. Inhaling, coming up. Carrying the moon. Exhale, going down. And you probably got this movement, this form. If you haven't, you can always let me know by jumping up and down or something. I'll show you sideways as well. Inhaling. Exhale. And now again, imagine you're just floating up in water. So take that effort away from the movement. Allowing your head to drop as your arms drop, lifting up your arms. Carrying the moon on a pause, exhale. And just a couple more times again. And then we'll have our arms by our sides. And feel what that feels like. Feel what your standing is like now. So we've been taking ourselves again off our center and coming back. We've been using our mind as a focus. We've been using our breath. And we're looking at having a smoothness in our body. Softening your feet and your ankles. And if we were to stand here for another half hour, what would you like to let go of somewhere in your body? We're not going to stand for half hour, but if you were. And the last one that we can explore together is called Beautiful Butterflies Dancing in Front of Flowers. And I'll show you probably a couple of times. So this time I'm going to bend forward, but quite a lot more. So my hands are about where my knees are. And then on an inhale, I'm bringing my arms up. So my position of my arms and my hands are facing the ceiling, my face is facing the ceiling on an inhale. On the pause of the breath, there's a transition, and the transition is my head looks forward and my palms face downwards. And then on an exhale, my arms go down. Okay, shall I show you once more? So I'm bending forwards, lifting up, beautiful butterflies. There's a transition at the pause of the breath, and then exhale. Okay, forward bending. Inhale coming up. Pause with the breath, the transition. Exhale coming down. And when your exhale coming down, your arms come down, your head looks forward. So you come back into that starting position. Beautiful butterflies dancing in front of flowers. And when you feel that you go, okay, I've got this quite comfortably now, again, just imagine you're in the ocean and you're just floating in water. It's this ocean that's just got this gentle current. So you start to take the effort again out of the movement. Inhaling through your nose, beautiful transition, exhaling through your mouth. Again, let's just do this a couple more times. I love doing beautiful butterflies dancing in front of flowers. I love that transition. Just there's something really interesting in my body when I do that. And then when your arms are next by your sides, just come back to standing quiet as you possibly can. They call this in Qigong, the Qigong state of mind. And the Qigong state of mind is just as quiet as you can be. Quiet as you can be. Soft in your mind, soft in your body, and use your skeleton really well. Welcome, Holly. Really nice to see you, or to see your name. We're just at the end of doing some Qigong. And just now place your hands just about 2 to 3 inches below your belly button on your dantian or your hara or the acupuncture point, the sea of Qi. And just stay here for a moment. And smile from your heart, smile from your heart. And then rub your hands together, dab your eyes, massage your head, shake an arm and a leg, and just have a little walk around the room. And then we'll come down to seated. And I'll unmute you. Sometimes it doesn't unmute everyone, but and if I need to mute some people because of sound or something. Okay, how was that? Try not to make too much noise in the background because you're all unmuted. Anyone got some comments?
Well, I really loved how you led us through the breath work. I thought that was so beautiful. It felt very full. It felt very non-effortful. And so thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Your voice is cutting up a little bit for me, but I've got pretty much most of that. You enjoyed that effortless. For me, that's the thing for breathing, for me. And I know there's lots of different styles of breath, but I think if we can come to one that has us, you know, I did the breath workshop or class yesterday and a couple of weeks ago. And for me, a smooth breath is really important. And I know there's lots of other types of breathing that we can do. But my understanding is that our breath underpins every pattern in our body. So if you want to change you change your breath. So, or if you're working at something and you have an old breath pattern, maybe try and introduce a new breath pattern.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody else? Don't have to. Fantastic. Easy breathing. So let me do a share screen and I'll just go through what we're going to look at today. Can you see that? Yep. Okay, so we're going to look at boundaries today. I think it's going to be really cool. A lot of the stuff that comes from my practice of long time practice of zero balancing and also the body work that I do now, understanding different boundaries, and we're going to look at those. So this little diagram I came up with, it's not perfect, but this figure of 8 really kind of relates to me for the skeletal system, because every time you put your foot down on one leg, it sends up a line of energy and it creates this kind of circle, this figure of 8. And the 2 arrows are kind of where that point is like our boundaries and or the skin, and the little light green is maybe the field outside. But we'll have a look at those kind of things also in a second as well. Let me pull that page down. Number 2, why is it not going? Okay. Is that number 2? Yeah. So I thought and I came up with these things, and I'm really okay if you guys want to add some other things. I was looking at, because if we're looking at boundaries, it's really good to look at what is not a boundary. And so I've got disembodied, so not in body. So, but you can definitely be in your body and not be grounded, but coming into your body to find a sense of groundedness is probably one of the key tools of allowing us to be present in a form. And I've also looked at emotions, and I kind of recognize that if we worry, if there's a lot of pensiveness, if there's fear, anxiety, if we care too much about someone, if we end up being overpowering towards someone, or there's disempowerment, or the needing to please. I think all of those emotional, and there will be more, and please just add some if you want to, that those kind of emotions also can contribute to our sense of boundaries or non-boundaries. I also recognize a lot, particularly from the body work that I've done for many years, that trauma and abuse always has an effect on people's boundaries, their relationship with people, whether it's physical, emotional, whether there's a loss of trust, again, whether there's fear, or some kind of energetic disconnection. So often when people are in a trauma situation, they actually separate their energetic or spirit side from their body, and you can become very disconnected. It does tend to happen even more so when the abuse is, the severity of the abuse can change that. And also lots of childhood patterns. So I'm not really going to go into all the ins and outs of where they might come from, because that's a really complicated subject, really. And I also put down past and future, because we're either living in the future or living in the past. And I know this, I think this has effect on our boundaries. I think it has effect on where we stand and how, because if we're too loose in our minds, you don't become present. So boundaries and being present, I think, very similar, lots of similarities. So we're going to look at today, and I'm not sure if we're going to get through all of it, but we're going to look at a little bit of touch. And I'll try and introduce you to touch. Some of you might have done some work with me with that before. We're going to look at how we can use body sensations to support us being boundaries. We're going to look at the breath, which is an integral part. We're going to look at chi energy. We're going to look at a bit of the way chi field. So I'll talk about that as well. How our mind and our focus and our presence can also support us with our sense of boundaries. And also we can use imagery and visualization as well, which we probably won't go into today. So in terms of touch, and the way that I learned touch was looking at different forms of touch. And one was called streaming, one was called blending, and the other one was called, and I've spelt it wrong there, I've got boundaries. The other one was actually called interface in the zero balancer world, and I'm choosing to call it clarity of touch or boundaries, not boundaries. That's quite funny, isn't it, for bond? And I think those concepts are quite useful. And I'll see if we can go through them like just in about less than 5 minutes with you. And maybe while we do that, I'll stop the share so that I can see you again and go on full screen. If you wouldn't mind putting your cameras on so I can see you, because that does help me, but please choose not to if you don't want to. So we're going to look at, first of all, we'll look at blending as a touch. And so in craniosacral therapy, they would use blending really successfully, where your energies merge. You feel the cranial rhythms, sacral rhythms, and as your hands merge in, you get into the sacral rhythms and they start to even out. It's called blending. And a way that you can do this even with yourself is if you just have your hands, I've got my arms up so you can see them, but if you have them actually down by your belly so you can let go of tensions in your shoulders, and hold your arm with each hand, but as softly as you can, just so that the idea is that you don't have boundaries. The idea is that you're so soft, it's either so energetic, so light in its touch, that maybe you can't feel where your right hand ends and your left arm begins. It's just a particular type of touch. Streaming is really difficult. So, and we'll talk about all three of them in just a minute. Streaming is a bit more difficult, but I will describe streaming to you, because it's much better to do this in a practice with two people. But basically streaming is when, if my energy comes from my own battery source and it goes into, if I'm working with my client, or if it's a friend or a person I'm in relationship with, that my energy streams into them. And it's actually coming from my own battery source. Or it might be the other way, that someone's streaming into me and it's coming from their battery source. So I might feel quite good and I might fill up with some energy because I've been receiving this energy from the person. But that person's going to start to get drained. And it does tend to happen a lot if we're not skillful at touch, and it tends to happen a lot also if you just inadvertently. So if you're doing a massage technique and every time you do an effleurage technique coming up the shoulders, you start to pull that person's energy. So their energy starts to stream into you. And it is probably one of the most common forms of burnout in hands-on or massage work, if you don't understand that principle of energetic exchange. So I'm going through this really quickly. The other one that in Zero Balance is called interface, that I'm just calling clarity of touch and boundaries, is if you actually hold your fingertips like this, and so you kind of get a fingertippy contact, a very bony contact, and then if you just pull so you feel an engagement. So do it enough so that you're really clear where your fingers end and your other fingers begin. And again, this is way easier to do this in partnership if you're working with someone, but you get a sense of some clarity of touch, I hope. Yeah, different from when you did the blending. So this is quite an important principle of boundaries. And it comes partly from being in contact bone with bone. But if you're in contact with soft tissue and soft tissue, you can still keep boundaries, but the boundaries that you maintain need to come much more from your mind and your presence. So being in touch with bone is really important for your sense of groundedness and sense of boundaries, which will also become a bit more, understand a bit more as we go along as well today. Does that make sense for everyone so far? If you can say something, wave a hand if you want to say something. Sally, what you're thinking? You're right. No. Okay, I'll move on then. I'm going to go back to my screen share. So we're now going to look at, so I'm going to, hey look, we've only got an hour, we've only got 2 hours to do this. And really it would probably take us 4 days to do this really well. So I'm giving you quite a lot of information. So some of it you'll be able to go away, hopefully, and just practice yourself. So I'm now going to look at body sensations. So you've got your skin, you've got muscles, you've got bones, you've got being present, presence, and grounded. And sthira and sukha are 2 yogic principles, and they mean stability and relaxation. And those are quite important concepts. So if you look at what we were doing in the Qigong, there was this sthira, this stability, but we also had the softness and the sukha that was involved as well. So one way to look at boundaries for yourself is to know where your skin is. So you can start just rubbing your skin. Why don't we just start rubbing our skin? This is let's do this. I'll tell you what, let's stand up. Let's get you guys moving. Let me get rid of the chair. Okay. So the skin is really important. And you know if you have cold and hot showers, it stimulates your skin. It's really good for boundaries. But quite a cool way to do it, if we just start massaging our heads, massage your skull. And think about your own boundaries and the shape and the feeling of your skull. And massage your forehead. So this is also, you'll be massaging lots of acupuncture points, your face, ears, jaw, neck. And then start slapping, coming up your hand on the outside, and then the inside going down. Outside going up, inside going down, outside going up, inside going down. Swap sides. So if you go outside going up, it follows the meridian pathways as well. So slap yourself, slap your skin, stimulate the skin. Shoulders, the back. You tap on the shoulders, shoulders at the back. Chest, areas of your rib cage that you can tap. And your belly, do it clockwise, so you follow the colon. Lower back, buttocks. Lower back, buttocks. Lower back, buttocks. Down the outsides of your legs. Insides coming up. Outside going down. Insides coming up. Outside going down. Insides coming up. And then just lift up a foot. See if you can balance on one foot. Massage a foot. So just massage anywhere on your foot that you fancy. Your toes, heels, soles of your feet. Swapping sides over. If you fall over, the idea is to fall over gracefully. Okay, so that's, you can come back to seated down again. How was that? That's nice, I like doing that. So this is now, we stimulated this, our skin, we stimulated the periphery of our body. Also, we slapped on the muscles as well, meridians, also a bit of the bone as well. Come back to screen share. We can work a bit more on the muscles, but we can also work on the bones as well. And then we're going to work on the bones really through the standing that we've done rather than, so if I was to do, with my body work is focusing a lot on the bones, which really helps with this sense of boundaries. When I talked about touch as well on above here, the touch you can, when people, want to see you guys again. When you touch, you can touch with different qualities in the same ways that you can dance. When you were talking, Benjamin, you can dance with the ocean or dance with different flavors. It's possible to touch when with a sense of having a boundary. I know what boundaries feel like. I know what they feel like in my own body. So if I work with someone and one of the issues that maybe they're having is they say, I don't have very good boundaries, I will work with really clear boundaries for them so that I will help for them to embody that sense of boundary. I'm not going to work like really energetic with someone who says, I'm lacking boundaries. Okay. But we can't do, we can do that. Hey, look, we can do that if you come with pairs and I can share stuff with you, even via Zoom, and we probably need to do that at some stage. Okay, if you need to talk, please talk. I'm just going to keep going on. Okay, the breath. So I've got here breath and chi. So we've worked a little bit on the breath already. And I think that was both with the lying down and also with the qi gong. And if you saw the way that we were working with the qi gong, you're looking at having that sense of smoothness with your breath, smoothness with your body, smoothness with your mind. Those three pillars, really important. There is a component of breath that is interesting to know. That when we breathe in oxygen, and when we breathe out carbon dioxide, the spent oxygen. But there is also an energy component to a breath. So for instance, a martial artist would use their breath. And it's said that the way that I've been taught is that when you breathe out, and we breathe out through your mouth in the qigong that I've learned, but when you're breathing out, cosmic energy comes into the top of your head on an out breath. So if I'm breathing, if I'm doing a karate chop, I go on an out breath. I don't do it on an in breath. You create this stability and again this stirrer side of your body to allow me to break brick with hand. And if we look at the chemistry of it, it should be broken hand and not broken brick. So you're getting some energy from somewhere. So when we breathe in oxygen. And when we breathe out the spent oxygen. But a pattern for some people is that they breathe in the chi, so we breathe in chi energy at the same time, because that's a universal energy that we breathe. So I'm going to say we breathe in oxygen and chi at the same time. So I'm breathing in and I breathe out the spent oxygen. So, but if I breathe in the chi energy and the oxygen and I breathe out the chi, I go, I do that again, breathing in. So there's a sort of, I'm not retaining the chi energy. It's quite an, and if you're a therapist and you work with people and you know people, this can be quite a common pattern without knowing it. Does that make sense, the concept for you? Okay, so try this just to start off with. Just breathe in normal, so or whatever normal might be. So breathing in, hold your breath, breathe out. But then also do that a few times, and then when you start breathing out, allow yourself to kind of deflate. Maybe you're sad, or maybe there's something, so you go, and there's like an energy depletion. And again, you're breathing in, and you go, not very nice really. Well, maybe it is, you might kind of like it. But depletion's not, actually depletion feels quite good, but serious depletion is not very good, but the first part of it does. Okay, so now what we're going to do is going to breathe in. And when you breathe out, hold on to your chi energy and just breathe out the spent oxygen. Creating stirrer in your body. Keep hold of that stirrer. So you stay that strength that's built up in your body from the chi energy, from the oxygen. And there's a certain power there, correct? You got that? It's different. If you were to stand in the wind and you go, I need to stand in or somewhere, you're not going to go, or you might do because you think you might be cold, but there would be, you can stand in the wind, you go, I can stand in this wind. Yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah? Someone talk to me.
Yes.
It's funny, isn't it? Oh, I so wish you were in my yoga studio here with me. I could see you and touch you, and we could. Okay, so that's a bit about the breath. This is, and I put chi, the chi and chi. There's two different ways of spelling it, and we've just gone through that. Another really important thing here is the wei chi here. It's the wei chi field. So the wei chi is a protective energy field. It's quite coarse, and it's yang in nature, okay? So in Chinese medicine, just below the surface of the skin is an energy, and it's called the wei chi. And it's a coarse and slightly protective energy field. So Sarah here, she goes swimming quite regularly in the sea, I know. And swimming in the sea and getting cold stimulates your wei chi. So doing hot, cold. And if people, for the people, and it relates a lot to the lung energy as well. So people who have more susceptible for colds will probably have a weak wei chi. Their lung energy will be quite weak. And the way to stimulate that is you do this, like we've done. The slapping. Or you do the hot, cold. Or what you do, was it with olive leaves, isn't it? You whack yourself, or I don't know what it was that they used, but some sort of stimulation of the area, it's just below your skin. In body work, you can work on the person's wei chi, and it's quite fascinating when you do. I can't teach you that. I'm not sure if I could even teach you that over Zoom because it's quite subtle. But just to let you know, so it's just below. It's birch, thank you. It's the birch thing you do. It's just below the skin, just barely below the skin. And some people have a weak wei chi so that their energy seeps out. And working in body work, I can contact the wei chi. I can then ask the client to look in their body to see where it is, if there is any holes or gaps. And just by holding it, these energetic gaps fill up. So don't forget, this is also part of the whole thing about boundaries, that if you've got a weak Wei Qi, there's a hole in it somewhere that being filled up is going to help you with your own integrity and your boundaries. I probably could teach you to do it. I could teach you to do it. We'll have to do it in pairs. It's an amazing place to touch. And throughout my whole working life, and I've been doing body work, this type of body work since the 90s, it's never not worked. Is that the right way to say it? It's always worked. And if someone doesn't have a weak Wei Qi, they won't know what I'm talking about, but the people that do recognize it really well. So how do these weak Wei Qis come? Difficult to know. Some of it's emotional, some of it's historical, some of it's childhood, some of it's just constitutional. But we can change that, and you can change that through the breath. You can change it through your mind's focus and presence, and a lot about your thought process. I put down here how we are, where we are, because I think we can do these things and be present no matter where you are. It's how you are, where you are. We can't really have an excuse that I'm not in the right place to do something, or to look at the support that I might need for grounding. Okay, so these are the things that we might look at. Here I put down opportunity and choices. And a lot of the work that we do when we do yoga and somatic work and embodied work is all about giving ourselves more choices and more opportunities and more versatility. So we've done the cavity breathing to start off with when we were lying down. We've done a bit of Qigong, so those 3 exercises. We've learned that Qigong state of mind, which is just trying to be quiet. We've looked at the Wei Qi. And now I'd like to introduce you, there's kind of going to be 2 parts to this. We're going to do a spinal circular breathing and also a somatic exercise to give you a really cool experience of front and back, introvert, extrovert, moving forward, coming back. Okay? And then we'll see how we get on after that. So the spine, I mean, maybe I can show you here. You need to tell me if you can see this or not. This is Rangi, by the way. He follows me wherever I go. Not quite. Okay. You can see that okay? So the spine for me, with pretty much everything I do, is really, really important. And if you look at the spine here, and the side view, you can see how deep the front of the spine is within the cavity of the body. And the bulky part, the weight-bearing part of your spine, is the front part of your spine here. The bulky part of the spine, the back part of your spine is probably the part of the spine, when someone talks about spine, you'll probably think more here. If I were to cut the ligaments here, your spine would just collapse. And if I were to cut your ligaments, the anterior longitudinal ligaments, your spine would concertina up because it's under pressure from the discs all the time. So there's this energy that's in your spine that wants to come up. There's also, interestingly enough, a cavity difference. So the atmospheric pressure here is greater than up here. So your organs are always being pushed up, always this energy pushing up, because they're seeking this lower gravity. So there's this energy that is an uplifting energy. Last thing, before we just do a few exercises here, your coccyx down here, deep down in your pelvic area. And the top of your spine is here. Don't know if you can just see, in the mouth. So if I didn't have a gag reflex, I could touch the top of my spine with my fingers. That's how high the spine is. So I just wanted to get you bearings so that because we're going to do some focus on some circular spine breathing. Okay? Well, you know, because if your fingers, like Sally was doing, if you put your finger at the back of the occiput here, you know that you're at the top. And then if you were to put a finger diagonally opposite, that's the top of your spine. Okay. So let's use this energy that's in there. So this we're going to do, if you're familiar with yoga, we're going to do cat-cow seated. It's basically flexion and extension. So you don't do cat-cow, stay seated, but we're going to do it seated. So here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do so what I'm going to do is I'll do it sideways. And we go, inhale, exhale. Quite easy, really. Flexion, extension. And see if you can just imagine or think where your coccyx is and start your breath deep down your coccyx so it comes up your spine. Inhaling to the top of your spine, and then the exhaling, just a softening and a recoil. A little bit like we were doing before with the breath. Inhaling. Exhale. Inhale. Try and do it the front of your spine, the front part of your spine, not the front part of your body. Try and go deep into the cavity of your body. Inhaling. Exhaling. Inhaling. So you end up getting this circular energy. So don't forget, this is a practice, and it's always a practice. We never get anywhere or achieve anything really. It's just always a practice. Inhaling. Using that energy and exhaling. Keep doing that movement, but slow the movement down. So if you're moving this much, just slow it down a tiny bit, inhaling, exhaling, and then keep slowing it down till you're barely moving at all. Till you're barely moving at all. Inhaling, exhaling. And then I want you to really not move, but just allow it to be a tiny bit of movement, but more an energy thing. So keep that movement of your inhale and your exhale quite close to your spine. Inhaling, exhaling. Tiny little bit of movement just to encourage that. I like having a bit of movement, but have the movement kind of more energetic in its quality. Okay? Keep exploring that for a bit longer. And you can now do it with even no movement. So you're just looking at the breath. Front of the spine, back of the spine. So you're keeping that sense of sthira in your body throughout the in-breath, throughout the out-breath. Have your jaw just gently open. Have your tongue gently resting on your palate. Just see if that changes for you. You'll look a little bit gormless, but don't worry. We're all going to look a bit funny with your mouth open. So we just take our time, just stay with that a bit longer. If your mind goes off, doesn't matter, just come back. If you don't quite get it, just imagine you're getting it, because imagination's really good. It's kind of sometimes a bit hard. And then just come back with your eyes open. Okay. How was that?
That was quite interesting, because I realised I wasn't bringing the energy all the way up the spine. It's sort of levelling off around the middle of the rib cage, and so I was like, oh, how high do I want to take this? Where does it naturally go? Should I be aiming for higher?
Yeah, aim for higher.
Mm.
Yeah, just as a practice, aim for higher. If you're stopping there, 100% aim for higher, so that you give yourself a different experience as well. A lot of it's just about giving ourselves new experiences and not just doing our old pattern. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Find yourself, if you want to just have a little walk around, you can, but just find yourself seated on the floor. You can sit on a chair if you want to, but I want you to have a kind of good purchase with your buttock or your sit bones on the feet. And we're going to do a somatic exercise. And part of the exercise is looking at and considering how we move, and do we move towards or do we move away? That's part of what we're looking at. And if you look at a basic cell, the way a basic cell works is that it opens and closes. There's an opening of a cell and a closing. There's a taking in and there's an excretion. So there's if a cell was too closed, then nutrition wouldn't come in. If it was too open, it would get too flooded. And we tend to live in one end of the spectrum, either moving forwards or moving back. And it will become a little bit more apparent as we just go through our exercise here as well. And the question then is for you, where on that spectrum do you lie? And what does that spectrum do to you? What does it allow you to do or not do for you? And again, this is default patterns, okay? So feel yourself seated comfortably. And that kind of neutral space that we experience when we were in our Qigong state of mind standing, in our uprightedness, see if you can get that seated, that place that's within you that's kind of neutral for you, doesn't feel forward or back. And just take your fingers to the top part of your head and come and trace down the side of your head, side of your ears, sides of your shoulders, sides of your body, midline all the way down to your hips. And that's kind of far enough really for our exploration. You could go down all the way down your legs if you wanted to, but that is probably enough. And now repeat that again, that movement. So everything in front of you, we're going to call the front body, and everything behind you is going to call the back body. So everything in front of my fingers, front body, everything else back. So try and see if you can embody that sensation. Okay? If you need to do that again, please do that a few times. But see if you can let that distinction just sink in for a moment and settle in your awareness. Think that distinction of what is front and what is back. Just let that sink in just for a moment. And now I'd like you to do some exploration with some leaning, and start off just by leaning forwards. And when you lean forwards, there'd be a little condensing. So this is a little bit cat-cowish, but only a tiny bit. So just allow yourself to lean forward and stay there. And let the tissues just relax in your leaning forward. And then allow the tissues to expand back as you come back to neutral. That was leaning forwards. And now explore the same thing back, allowing the tissues to condense slightly backwards. So this is really just doing like a flexion and extension, and hold that for a while. And then come back to a place that you feel is neutral, or your neutral place. Okay? So the question for you is, what felt more familiar? What felt more comfortable for you? What was your default position? Don't forget, we're all going to have different, well, we're not going to all have lots of different, we'll either be forward or back, but there'll be the, so what's more familiar for you? Let's do that again. Just bending forwards a little bit, seeing how familiar that is. How does that feel? Familiar, unfamiliar? Come back to neutral again. And then slightly bending back. Coming back to neutral. So the kind of questions that we could be asking is, am I an introvert or am I extrovert? Did I come into lockdown going more introvert, saying, oh, this is quite comfy for me because I don't have to be out in the world? And if you're an extrovert person, do you go, oh my God, I don't know how to do this because I'm normally like this, but now I've got to do this? What are you like when you're walking around in the supermarket? We all have our default patterns. Does anyone want to share anything about your patterns? Don't have to.
Yeah, just really quickly, that personally the forward feels much more comfortable. But I know whenever, particularly if I'm at work, I do tend to go into this backward leaning forward, you know, out into the world kind of pose, which isn't particularly comfortable for me, but it's the way I present myself when I'm working. Yep. And it's really nice to get home and just come back to this slightly more, you know, just, it's like a real comfort, yeah.
Yeah. The thing is that we certainly have default patterns, that's for sure. But then we also have patterns for occasions. So if you're coming up to one of your friends in the street and you'll be much more extrovert with them. But if you're coming up to someone that you really don't quite want to talk to, you'll probably retreat a little bit. So we use them for different times. But we certainly have one. I'm way more comfortable being extrovert. Well, I think you can probably tell that anyway. So that's my more comfort zone. So there's no right nor wrong with this, but just looking at how we can navigate. So does everyone have a place that they feel more comfortable with, or that they understand that that's their default pattern? Yeah, you kind of got that. Sarah, do you want to say something? You don't have to.
I'm definitely more towards being an introvert.
Yeah, we knew that. We knew that. And that's your comfort.
Really knew that.
Yeah, awesome. No right nor wrong. This is not a judgment. Lucy, my wife, she's much more introvert. I'm a complete opposite. So when we go out to a party, I'm wanting to go around like this, and she's Not quite, but she's more in the corner. This is not strictly true, but I'm exaggerating that example as well. So I think one of the things about this exploration that we can have, because this is to do with boundaries as well. So if I'm overpowering to someone, I'm going to break their boundary. So if I come to Sarah and I'm too overpowering, she's just going to retreat more. So I'm not going to be very skillful in the way that I'm relating to her. But if I come to her with a certain softness, and maybe if I come to talk with Sarah with a little bit of back energy with my front energy, then it's going to be not so invasive, maybe. I'm making these words up, but you know the kind of story that I'm trying to create. So let's do that exploration again as we're looking at going forward and back, feeling where you feel comfortable, feeling where you feel uncomfortable, or not so comfortable, whatever the word might be for you. Your forwards, your back, introvert, extrovert. And instead of now just going forward with your energy, as we're exploring being an extrovert or going forward, instead of going forward with it, can you go forward with it, but contain it within your skeleton and have it more upright? Does that make sense? So particularly for the people that are not so comfortable with being more forward, can you go forward but keep it within your frame? And then when you go back, the same thing, keep that closely within your frame. So if you're an extrovert person and not feeling quite comfortable going introvert, can you also keep that quite close within that line of your skeleton, of your vertebra, your spine? So the experience that I'm trying to help facilitate for you is, how can I be introvert and extrovert without going out into the world and being an extrovert, but I can be an extrovert within my frame here. If you're a performer on stage and you're an extrovert, you have to stay within this place, because if you give out too much, you'll drain yourself. So there's a certain presence of your exteriourness. And the same is if you're an introvert, if you can keep that so that you can feel comfortable with it, particularly if it's not your default pattern. So I'll just leave you for a minute or so just to explore that in your own way without me talking. It's about more choices. Okay. So I'm trying to give you kind of a somatic experience of how to stay in your own frame with regardless of what emotions you have, so that you don't seep out your emotions. So you can be an extrovert but still stay within yourself, so you don't drain yourself. About boundaries. And then you understand when you see someone retreating, you know that that's their default pattern. So you can kind of watch how people function and relate in the world.
It's body language, really, isn't it?
Body language, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know that from touch, when you touch someone and they retreat or they come forward to you. Shaking hands is an amazing way to find out about someone, whether you get a wet fish handshake, or you get your big claspy one and they break your wrist or your fingers, or they hardly touch it. But my worst one is when someone shakes hand and they don't really touch. It's kind of like, ooh, really? You know, that kind of feeling. Does anyone else want to say anything, share anything? How you doing, Benjamin?
A lot of information.
A lot of information. I know, I'm sorry. I'm quite good at giving lots of information.
It's beautiful. For me, it's not when when I come in front or I go back, there's always a feeling of fear between. So, and I try the other movement going to the left or the right. This was comfort. Comfort. What's the word? This was good. Okay.
Yeah.
Even turning a little bit, like dancing.
Yes. Yeah.
And with the imagination, my energy goes up in this movement. This feels good. So more present and unstable. And actually, I don't need to go in one direction. I just need to stay here to do my job.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
This helps.
It's really good because emotions do come up and we do get touched. We do touch on different emotions. But really important is to stay grounded when you do this as well. So when we were feeling our feet on the floor, that if you want to feel good boundaries, come into your skeleton. Way easier than your soft tissues. Yes, if you the skeleton has, it's called piezoelectric qualities to it. So if you knock it, that vibration gets propagated along its length. And if you hit muscles, it kind of just goes dum, dum. So to get into your skeleton, because if you think about energy that's coming from the heavens, coming down your skeleton, the most powerful energies go through your skeleton, not your soft tissues. So it really helps us to stay grounded as well.
Mm-hmm.
The front...
Actually...
Yeah.
I actually also do some a lot of embodiment practice and singing, and it changed a lot. I feel my bones more, the sound more in the bones more and more with the practice, and I really like to discover my bones, especially with the bounce, with the sound.
Yeah.
Like go deeper and humming and all this stuff really helps. And expanding since last weeks of practice. Love this.
Yeah, so singing from the bones. So in Chinese medicine, interestingly enough, the bones, the kidneys rule over the bones in Chinese medicine. And so when you're singing, there's a lot of breath work and sound that comes from your kidney energy.
Mm-hmm.
And the kidney energy also is in command of the out breath. And the lung in Chinese medicine is in command of the in-breath, interestingly enough. And the front of your body is related embryologically. So as cells and as humans, or as or our earliest distinction as human organism, is we establish those two lines, the front and the back. Those are the first two things that happen to us embryologically. The back is connected to the uterine wall and the front is connected to the umbilicus. So two different relationships. And then that midline starts to develop after that. So we know the front and back intimately well, all of us, because it was the first thing that was ever our experience. So we're just tapping into that as a understanding that sense of connection and boundaries. So front is more for nourishment, because it's, you can see that, can't you? When you get nourishment. And the back's more connected to the mother. No, the front is more connected to the mother. How's that all sounding so far?
I think it's fascinating because I'm definitely introvert. It's total clear, and I knew it, and I never studied this, but
yes.
What also fascinates me is that somehow I have been using this because I reckon that when I put myself in situations that I don't like, I always do this. And I have been quite fascinated about it myself, because it's like, who is this person doing this? It's not me. And so it's, yeah, it was quite clearing for me. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So a question for me is that, because don't forget, when you do this, you're also doing this behind. You can't just do one or the other. So just a question, and I've got no idea what the answer might be, but how much is that you going backwards and feeling that secure sensation going backwards, and how much is it a pretense going forward or something? I'm making the words up. You don't have to have the answer. It's a question.
No, I don't think I have an answer for that. I would have to explore it because I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really interesting question, even though I said it myself, because it creates an inquiry for you to think, what is it that I'm doing coming forwards? Where's the main sensation? Because I can kind of feel it at the back as well. But this is great. I like that. I remember my mother doing that years and years ago. We went into a pub in England, and there was the whole family, and everybody turned around and stared at us, and it was quite weird. And my mother did that, and she went, "Good afternoon, everybody," and did that thing just like you were doing. And I still remember it today. It was amazing how she just, and everybody in the pub just went, like that. It was fantastic. So yeah, it's interesting. But for me, it's kind of, it's not just going forward and going back, but it's finding that place in between so I can reside and be okay both in some ways, and explore that. Because it is a dance between one and the other. Anything else? Anybody want to say? I'm just looking at my notes. So going into lockdown, were you comfortable going into lockdown? Do you feel, well, that's interesting, Sally, you being an extrovert and being comfortable. What did you do to satisfy your extrovert personality? Tell me.
I consider myself an introvert. I think I have an extrovert job, but I'm an introvert person.
Okay.
And so to be at home this much is really, really nice. And to not actually have, you're talking about the energy exchange, which is really interesting. I'm interested with that streaming energy, because that's something I do a lot at work. There's a lot of energy exchange, and I'd often go home really tired after doing workshops or performances and such. And so that's really nice to have you talking about that. The extrovert is definitely a work persona. It's a part of me. I can't say it's not a part of me. Obviously it is. I'm just far more comfortable at home when I don't have to have this massive energy exchange. Yep. So this is really nice. But working through Zoom classes like you're finding here, it's a different energy exchange, isn't it? Finding it far more mental than physical. So it's just balancing all of that stuff. I like that you're talking about balance in all of this, and that there's a place in the middle that we can reside more comfortably, or try and be more comfortable with this, rather than these massive waves through, which is what I tend to do.
Yeah, and I think you'll still do them, and then you'll just come back. I still do them. I mean, my word, I've had so many emotions over these last 8 months with this lockdown. And I think we've all been challenged in that way as well. Well, most of us have been quite challenged. My emotions have been all over the place. It's quite incredible, really.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to share anything?
Yes. Someone else?
Go, you go, Benjamin.
Okay, thank you. I shared I did the exercise again and found when I go back, I had a sensation here on the side, and it seems to be to me like the fear is here. Something really loud coming to me. I need to close my eyes. I could feel it in the muscles, and when I lean towards, I had a feeling I can't tell the sensation here. And with this, I hold it first there, and was easier. The fear appears, even if I go in front. I here don't have the sensation of fear anymore.
So you don't have the sensation of fear anymore, did you say?
Yes, if I hold this, the parts where I feel this fear, I'm more easier. And now maybe I can discover again what's different.
Yes, yeah. So a lot of these patterns, I mean, some of these patterns can be embryological patterns. Some of these patterns probably can be from your so your egg was in your grandmother. The egg of you was in your grandmother. And I think that even back then that we're affected by. So the egg of me was in my grandma that then went into my mother. So I was in Palazzo Square in the war as a egg in my mother's womb when my mother and my grandmother had to hear Hitler rant on in the square in Vienna. I mean, that's pretty crazy, isn't it? I could tell you some quite cool stories about that. I won't now because I'll probably cry about it. But, you know, I think that has an effect. I believe that it does. I don't believe that it can't. You know, I know that, you know, we're connected here across the world via Zoom. We can feel each other's energy. There's a connection. And I believe there's those connections as well. So a lot of these things can happen from, you know, even pre-birth, in pregnancy, childhood. A lot of these things come up from childhood patterns. I was, because I imagine quite a few of you were involved with the Embodied Conference and looking at emotions, and Gabor Mate said that basically all your reaction emotions come from your childhood somewhere. So when you're angry, so if I'm angry at you, I'm not angry at you, I'm probably angry at my brother when I was 6 years old. So a lot of these things are patterns that we have for a long time. Using your breath, using your body, using the mind, and doing these kind of things just help to break down those patterns. And one of the things that I like about having a practice is that it's the practice that does it, not me trying to change my patterns. So over a period of time, they just start to change. Everything has a consequence. So if I'm using my breath in a really smooth way, and I'm using my mind and my body in a smooth way, that has a consequence. If I use it in a non-smooth way, that has a consequence. And so just keep doing these practices, things start to change. They have to, really. True. How you doing? I'm just going to look at my notes. Someone else can talk. We have done a lot, Benjamin. Like you said, I covered quite a lot. This is for you to really go home and, or you are home. Sorry, you're not allowed to. We're not in lockdown here in New Zealand. It's just like a different world. You know, we probably got our things to come later on. I've got no idea, but it's almost just like business as usual, really. But yeah, this is for you to practice and just to see, be curious, become more skillful with the way that you are. I don't believe that we're just bobbing around in an ocean. I think we can jump on a raft and get some paddles and paddle. And I think there's a lot of things that we can do to help support ourselves. Most of us, most of the time. And when you things don't go so well, that's cool too, because things don't go so well, and then you start to learn. And transition times are really important anyway, when we have different transitions. A transition tends to be when your pattern no longer works for you. When something doesn't work, you have to transition away from it, whatever that might be. And remember, that keeps happening to us all the time during our lives. You transition away from friends because it just doesn't happen anymore. You transition away from your husband or your wife, that happens too, because it's no longer working, or you're using a breath technique. If you're stuck on a belly breathing breath, you have to move away from that if you want to change. If you're stuck on a thoracic breathing breath, move away from that. If you have a transitional something that you do, if you do it regularly, that no longer can be transformational. You have to do something else. You just repeat the same experience. It might be a lovely experience, and I'm not decrying that, but it's not necessarily. But transitions happen often when there's turbulence as well, where there's a bit of agitation. And the best way to look through these things is to pay attention where you're leaning in and leaning out. One of the best ways. How you are. You know, I don't know your political leanings. I don't know what your views are about COVID. But whatever your views are, if you lean into something that doesn't suit you, you can maybe adjust your body so you lean back a bit. Because you don't have to lean into everything. You don't have to lean back. Does that make sense? We've got about 12 minutes left. Does anyone want to talk? Anyone want to share anything? Oh, Leslie, you were going to say something. Sorry.
For me, COVID came right at the perfect time.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah, that's nice.
I was traveling for the last 3 years and decided to come back, take a flat, and so on. And actually, I do a lot of body exercises and come back home.
Nice.
Here.
Nice.
And I have the time, no chance to run away to travel. And perfect from out the world, and so good time for me to coming home.
Fantastic. You know, there's so many opportunities, and you know, they say it's now the reset, isn't it? I'm not going to do what their reset. I'm going to do my own reset. No one's going to tell me how to reset me. And you guys do the same. Find out within that parameter, do your own reset. Whatever that might be. It might be doing what the reset that the governments are telling you to do. But within that, you have to do your own thing, I believe. Leslie, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was, but it was really just to say that I fully understand Karina and Sally when they say that the forward movement is something that they do it's like a person that they take with them everywhere. And then you fold back or sit back when you get home and just relax. And I didn't quite realise it until we've done this exercise. That is exactly what I do. Fantastic. And then I come home and I feel kind of sort of overwhelmed from the day, and I can just relax into the silence and the quiet and the zero activity around me. Not physically, I'm quite an active person, but just nothing going on around me. So it's been a real shock, the lockdown, because obviously I've had to shut my business and lots of other things have gone on, but it's sort of also made me realise I'm really, really good at being on my own or being self-sufficient.
Yeah.
I always sort of thought maybe I was okay at that, but it really, you know, I can go time without interaction, although I don't know how healthy that is.
Well,
Really.
it's probably, I mean, for someone who it's okay with, it's healthy. For someone who's an extrovert, it's going to feel challenging. There's no right nor wrong. It's really important for you. It's great that you have a different, maybe understanding, maybe a slightly different appreciation of that. So my question for you and my curiosity is, when you're at work and you're doing your outward thing, because we can all do that, can't we? Even if we can do performances, you know. And so when you're at work, you stand in your slightly more forward-leaning performance. Can you do that, but stay more in your skeleton, in that circular breathing that we did, related to your spine? Maybe that might be quite an interesting project for you to explore. And then maybe you don't come home so drained, but you've still been outward, but you've actually not been outward, but you've been inwardly outward. Make sense?
Yeah, I think it is a practice, and it sounds nice to balance that rather than being one or the other. Yeah. So that's definitely something I need to practice.
Yeah, good. Fantastic. Anybody else want to say anything?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you, because this has been like kind of revelatory for me, actually, really.
Great.
I understand myself much better now, and my patterns, and also for me, the lockdown has been like no big difference. I work very much by my own. I'm self-sufficient. I live on the countryside. I spend most of my days alone. And so it has been quite contrary, because I took advantage of this situation and took a lot of courses and actually became extroverted in a way that was not at all, I surprised myself a whole lot. And so I have been drained by all this. What you have helped me with here is this, that I have to really exercise this with the boundaries, not leaking out my energy, because I could really relate to that I have very easily to take in energy, but obviously I have not really in control what I release and what I don't release, and that's something I have to work on, I think.
Yeah,
because that could be the key for me, really.
Yeah, great. So when you are able to walk down the street again, so here's an exercise for you to do, is when you're walking down, breathe in, hold on to your chi energy, breathe out and hold on to your chi energy. And if you get really strong chi energy, everybody moves out of your way, guaranteed it. And you'll be able to work out how strong your chi energy is. My wife's amazing at doing that. I have to work at it, and she just walks down the street and people part. We were in America a few years ago in this really busy outdoor market, like thousands of people. She was just walking up and people were partying, and there was someone following and said, well, how are you doing this? I can never walk this fast through. But it's how, so if my chi energy is weak, I have to move away from, I tell you, the most difficult for me to do it is in Holland, because the people are much more, they've got this upright steeriness to them. And so when I'm in Holland, I can't match their energy in that same way. But it's Karine, it's a really good practice. Breathing in, holding onto your chi, breathing out. I'm still strong. People move out of your way.
It's obviously also a lot about where you feel safe and where you know the situation, and
totally.
Because I mean, I'm a nurse, and I have met a lot of people and confront in crisis and such, and I never had problems with that. I'm quite confident, and I can meet people I never met before and so on. But it's when you are in territory that you are not used. Then, as an introvert, it's really draining, and you need really to find some. I need to find some way to keep my energy inside them.
We all do in different ways, and absolutely, if it's really if you're losing your energy, you need to do something else. And it just gives you a skill of being able to keep hold of your energy a bit more, because you don't want to lose your energy. It's giving you more. And if you're with someone that you find their energy quite difficult, you're not going to be open up to them. You're going to close off a bit. You know what happens when someone puts their arms, they're chatting to you and they put their arms over and you think, oh, what's going on? There's this energetic. I think that's fine for people to do that. You have to allow them to protect themselves. It's not rude. We don't know how to protect ourselves well, and we've got to be really careful. It's true.
Yeah, it can also be for an introvert like me who has been living very introverted for a long time. It can also be a need to be more extroverted, but it has to come in a tangible way, in a way that does not violate my inner sanctuary.
Well, don't forget, we're all of those things, because
Yes.
we do have a front and a back, and we just feel more comfortable in a default pattern. In certain situations, there might be certain situations where you're more comfortable in another default pattern. You've probably got many of them. We're very complicated beings. It's not just one or the other. How about we stand up, and then we're going to lie down in a minute and do a few minutes of Shavasana. So one of the breath patterns that I like to work with, and if you're used to doing yoga and you do a forward bend, often when we forward bend, we exhale, don't we? Because your belly's like that. And then you come up and you inhale, front of your lungs maybe. Exhale, forward. Inhale, coming up. So just do that pattern. If you're used to doing that, exhale, forward. Inhale, coming up. Exhale, forward. This is not a Qigong exercise particularly, it's just bending forwards. But now what I'd like you to do is bend forwards, but breathe into your lungs at the back, because your lung tissue at the back is more lung tissue at the back than the front. So lean forward and inhale into your lungs, and then exhale, coming up. Inhale. Exhale, coming up. And if you're finding this difficult, that's really good, because it just shows that you're doing something that is not your normal pattern. Inhaling, bending forwards, lungs at the back. Exhale, coming up. And then the next time bending forwards, allow, if you're comfortable, allow yourself just to hang. And maybe cross your arms as well. And hang here if it's comfortable for you. And if you're a belly breather, you'll probably want to breathe in your belly, but try and see if you can breathe just into your lung tissue at the back. If it's uncomfortable with your arms, you let your hands just dangle towards the floor. Breathing into your lung tissue at the back. And then very slowly come up to standing, just gently, keeping your arms just hanging there and your scapula hanging, allowing your spine just to come up to an uprightedness. And then when you're upright, stand just for a moment and then lie down. And we'll do about 5 minutes of Shavasana together. We go over by a couple of minutes. We do a few minutes of Shavasana, and then I'm happy to hang around for 5 or 10 minutes afterwards if you want to, but because we've gone over, you might want to go, but you've got nothing to do anyway because you're locked in, so you might as well hang out. Thanks for joining, everyone. Appreciate you coming by again. Next week, I'm going to focus on the feet, and we're going to look at moving from the feet, moving forwards. We're going to study the feet a bit. So while you're lying down, I know that we've done loads and loads of information here. And just allow yourselves just to quieten down again with your mind so that that information can just get absorbed in some fashion. Seeing how you can just let go of that chat mindset, feeling your body on the floor, feeling the boundaries between you and the floor, the support that's given to you from the floor. And just for a moment, just allow yourselves to, just if it's available for you, just to drift off. And there's that place between forward and back, place between left and right, and there's a place between awake and asleep. It's that yoga nidra space, that twilight zone. And just see if you can just drift off into a twilight zone. And just for a few more minutes, just keep letting go, just as much as you possibly can. Keep letting go. There's a skill of letting go, there's a skill of holding on. Just keep letting go. And then just slowly come back, just move fingers and toes and hands. Sorry we didn't have a bit longer, it would have been nicer to have a bit longer. But just with that same care and attention that you've been doing your movement, just gently lie on your side, either your left side or your right side. And maybe curl up a little bit as well. While you're on your side, please give yourself a little cuddle. Please give yourself a big cuddle. And appreciation for all the work that you've done to become who you are. In your world of introvert, extrovert, forward, back. It's all a practice. You keep practicing, keep practicing. And giving yourself that little cuddle, that bit of love. If you feel moved, you might want to share it with people around you, maybe people a bit more needy than we are. Sharing some love in the world. A lot of people needing a lot of love at the moment, that's for sure. And then come gently up to seated again. So namaste everybody. Thank you for joining. Goodness in me nourishes and honours goodness in you. Namaste. Oh, that was fun.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. It's really good.
Cool. So if you fancy joining next week, please do. I do, as I do mention this, I work from a reciprocity-based gift economy. If you are in a position to do some reciprocity thing, please feel free. If you're not, please feel free not to. Just a little reminder. And also share it with other people, because the more people that come on here, the more fun it is, really. And it gives it for a teacher. If you're a teacher, there's that energy exchange. So if you're getting something from it, let your mates know, you know, that they can come on, they can join in. These classes will be, I'm going to put them on a members page on my website at some stage when I can get around to working out how to do that. And so people will be able to go into, they'll be able to see past videos and lots of other goodies. There'll be just a small monthly charge or something like that, just to keep things going, really. Okay.
That sounds good. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Leslie. If you want to hang around, please do. If you want to go, please go. It's been
Good night.
Good night, Sarah.
Many thanks. I'm gonna go have breakfast.
Yeah, good for you. Thanks, Karina. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Benjamin.
Thank you, Paul. See you next week.
Welcome, yeah, see you next week, Sally. Nice to see you again.
Bye-bye. See you next week.
Bye-bye. She's the last to go.
I'm just going to say, hopefully next week I'll be able to join in a bit more with that. My broken arm's just not happy this week doing much.
Yeah.
So, and then sorry, I missed last week because it only happened last week, so I wasn't in any fit state to do much. So, but hopefully see you next week. And
yeah, I do repeat these classes as well now. For me it's Thursday night, so I do this class again on a Wednesday morning. But this particular class will be in not next week, but the week after. Next week I'm going to do the skeleton Wednesday morning, and the week after that I'll be redoing this class again. If I get the numbers coming Wednesday and Thursday, I'll keep both classes going. So they will be repeated, so if you might want to join in then.
Okay, is this skeleton one the one from last week?
Yes, it was.
That I missed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to. So that'll be Wednesday morning. I'll try and come to that next week.
Yeah.
Because I would be interested in that.
Cool. It's the same Zoom link, but it's just on different days. You can see on the homepage of my website. You can see the times and stuff.
I'll do that. Thank you very much, Paul.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Leslie.
Okay. See you next week.
Your arm.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Leslie, there are sounds you can use. Go on the internet and look for sounds for broken bones for healing.
Oh, okay, I will do.
Cool.
I'll do that. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hi, Sandy. You still there? Karenza's asleep. Karenza slept last time as well. She did. Sandy must be asleep too. Can you not?
Probably.
And you don't know how to say goodbye, do you?
No. I can never ever leave anywhere.
Okay, so I'm gonna sign off. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll see you next week. Okay, take care.
See you next week. Bye. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.